place. Space is the place.
There's no limit to the things that you can do.
Space is the place.
There's no limit
Space is the place.
to the things that you can be.
Space is the place.
Sun Ra was a musician and band leader, and he was involved in music that could probably be best described as being experimental music. Sometimes he's kind of lumped amongst free jazz. He was active between 1934 and 1993 when he died, and he released over 100 albums in that time. Um, his kind of pivotal moment in his life, he describes as being in around 1936 or 1937. He took a trip to Saturn, and I couldn't possibly comment on whether there were any substances involved. Apparently, this was a religious experience. He gained in the process a philosophy and a mission to pacify the world through experimental music. And to all intents and purposes, it seems like he was completely convinced by this conviction. Either that, or it was a very elaborate joke that he perpetuated over a long period of time. He assembled a band, which was often called the Orchestra, but changed names at various points. And apparently, members of the band were also convinced by his philosophy. So, I think a polite word to describe him would be eccentric. Hi, my name is Dan. So this is an album of crazy music by Sun Ra. There's a big band here, and some of it you might be able to describe as jazz. Let's keep going. There's lots of brass instruments, there's bass and drums, and Sun Ra, particularly on keys, mostly a Farisa organ. So the first track, which is about half the album, probably split across the two sides of an LP, I would guess, is the title track, Space is the Place, and it's 21 minutes long. And it's mostly, I'm not sure I'd describe it as jazz, it's mostly a groove with stuff that's repeated over and over. And it's got, a few bars to it. And then it repeats, but it's overlapping the different things that are playing as if they'd started at a different point in time. So it's got this kind of delaying thing. And particularly, we've got that with the singing. I'll come back to that in a minute. So, I mean, obviously, this has been done on purpose. And overlaid on top of that, there is some sax and some other brass, which is kind of playing kind of free jazz, chaotic stuff, making quite a brash cacophony of sound. And there's what I presume is the organ is playing sounds that go boing, 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 like that, and different notes, and sometimes holding a boing, like that. There's other stuff in here. There's a lot of stuff going on, actually. And the singing is mostly, so I think I've worked out that there are three different people singing in here. There's somebody who's a male voice who's quite in the background singing more stuff than this, but most of the singing is the line "Space is the place," repeated over and over and over and over and over many, many, many times. And then the kind of defining feature of the track is that the things, I presume that they were recorded by everybody playing everything kind of all the way through, but it brings things in and out of the mix. So sometimes you just have the vocals and the sax, and sometimes you'll have the rhythm section and one of the vocal tracks, and sometimes you'll have, other things going on, and it just plays with that, what's going on at this point in time, quite a lot. So it keeps moving on, and it keeps giving you different combinations of what's going on. When I first started listening to it, I found it quite chaotic overall. Actually, having listened twice, and it's quite long, I kind of felt like I got used to what it was and what it was doing. I think I would say I'm a little sad that they didn't continue this and make a whole album of this thing, because maybe they couldn't have extended it out that long. But it's certainly for me, it's the best track on the album. So what's on the other side, or the other four tracks? We've got one track that's got instrumental piano and jazz band stuff going on. There's some discordances with that, but it feels more like a kind of hard bop, if I'm at all right, kind of swingy kind of thing. There's one track which is slower and is a bit more free form. It doesn't have kind of a beat that's going all the way through it, and that's again, it feels like jazz. And I found that the dullest of the tracks on the album. The next track is very free form. Kind of, I would describe this as being kind of hardcore free jazz stuff, where they're basically nobody's paying any attention to anybody else, and they're just trying to make as much noise as fast as possible and as strangely as possible. So it's kind of proper full on free jazz, but it's not very long. So you might be able to put it with it, unless you love free jazz, in which case you might really enjoy it. And then the final track is a bit more like the first track. It's quite short, but it's the same kind of groove thing with bits that are being repeated and bits coming out. And it's about a rocket to Venus, I think. There's an interesting point in it where there's this kind of clicking noise that then goes very fast. I think they've used a fishing reel to get that sound in that, which is I found possibly the most enjoyable bit of that track. So I would say overall, I mean, there's some interesting stuff going on here, but as a thing to listen to and enjoy, I mildly enjoyed the first track. I'm not completely sold on it. The rest is, I found it a bit dull, to be honest. Yeah, um, that's kind of what I feel. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is that there is a film also made by Sun Ra called Space is the Place. And I have watched the film as well. This is my dedication to my art as a reviewer, I think. So I don't think most of the music that's on the album is actually in the film. And the film's kind of it feels like an art house kind of thing. It's the theme is about Sun Ra being some kind of person from another planet, and he sets up some kind of employment agency and is in some kind of conflict with somebody called the Overseer. And I don't really follow much of what's going on. There's kind of fairly cheap looking visual effects used, but this was, early 70s. Um, and it really does have a kind of art house feel of stuff that are doing strange things and not really explaining them. There is a certain amount of nudity. There's some violence against women. I have to say, for no obvious reason for either of them, except for the fact that actually most of the film, I wouldn't be able to say what the obvious reason was behind it. So maybe there was reasoning to it. So I don't know. I would say if you like the album, it doesn't mean you're going to like the film. I would say the film it's a curiosity, but it's not a great watch. But I'm not doing film reviews here. I'm doing an album review. So this album, mildly okay. What do you think? Please do tell me. Do leave something in the comments. And as I am doing at the moment, I'm going to invite you to say, well, what score would you give this album? So that's it from me for now.